Well, thank you so much. So everybody got a form to put in their opinion if they want to share. It's very helpful. A few people walked out emotional, so that's always a good sign, I guess. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, right there.
I spoke to you before. My name's Bill.
I don't.
I gave up a 40-year friendship with an alienator when I found out he was an alienator because I knew his wife for 27 years. And I want to, again, ask you, what's the proper way and the tone of a text to help get her children back, starting with her oldest child? If we get the oldest child back, the rest will fall in line. How do I, the children love me and know me for 20-something years. I want to come with a loving approach. Can you please explain your recommendation?
Sure. So the question is, how do you engage with children who you know have been alienated or erased from a parent? I would say the first step is to make sure the parent who has been erased is in a good place, is able to forgive and to love and to move forward. And like Caroline in the film, is no longer interested in winning or being right. They've gotten the help that they needed to be in a good place and to just be focused on the future. So I think that's the first step that's very important. Because I've seen cases where a child will go back to the parent and see a parent who's so angry, broken, bitter, or sad, or depressed, or just unable to deal, that they have a reunification, they reunite, but that might be just once, or it might just be for a few weeks, and then everything falls apart. So that the parent who's been erased realizes it's going to be a long process, there's going to be starts and stops, and they're ready for that, and that they prepare for that. And if that parent is ready, I would say, I think a text is a lot, but just to say, hey, there's this film called Erasing Family. I think it's about you. I think it's something similar. Why don't you check it out? And maybe we can grab coffee and talk about it. So I would start off with the softest approach. And then from there, just be like, I know your mom isn't perfect. No one is. No one has a perfect parent. No person is perfect. But it's good that you can talk to them and you can have this person in your life, or at least get to know them and make up your own mind and not having someone else make up your mind for you. And then I would maybe offer, if the child is interested, to facilitate a meeting while you're there in a public place, because a lot of these kids have said that they were very nervous to meet their parent. They often thought the parent didn't want to meet them. Like Ashlyn, what we didn't see in the film is she first calls up the stepmom, and says, hey, I'm Ashlyn, I'm Dizzy's daughter. Do you think he wants to talk to me? And she said, of course he does, but she didn't know that. So being willing to take it slow, I think, is very important. Does that answer your question? Or
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
Chris Bowen, Chesko, Monaco, and Bert's Father's Rights Movement. I'll try and give you the cliff notes here. As a dad, I have had to call the police 20 times here in Phoenixville because of my custody order being violated.
We don't have to get into the details. So
Okay.
just if there's a question about the film.
From my point of view,
Right.
I see the actual enforcement of the custody order as criminal. Here in Pennsylvania, we have a law that says it is a criminal offense to violate the custody order.
Right.
But it's very politically unpopular, especially for the district attorneys, to enforce those custody orders through the police.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a lot about the 50-50 bills currently in the states. What are your feelings about that, having a 50-50 bill with no enforcement whatsoever? Because if we have a 50-50 bill, if there's no enforcement, it's just going to perpetuate the problem.
So I think that you always have to look at this issue holistically, and there isn't one magic solution. So even if you have 50-50, but you don't give people the help they need to co-parent, the messaging that this is important, mental health services, mediation, that all needs to be free or very low cost. It's not going to be able to work for a lot of people. And also, as the film states, we need to stop spending all this money incarcerating parents who can't pay child support and use these literally $4 billion on programs to help families, programs to help people who are poor get back on their feet, or to, and I know this is unpopular, or a direct handout to the family, because spending $75,000 to put someone who's poor in jail, that doesn't help the family, doesn't help the person. And these custody orders have to be enforced. I don't think sending more people to jail is ever the solution, but there has to be a way where you don't have to go back to court if there's a problem with this. You don't have to pay a lawyer $30,000 to enforce a custody order. So, but it's all part of a bigger issue, which I think one of the first things is getting rid of the adversarial nature of family court. I don't think that judges and lawyers should be involved directly in a lot of these cases. It makes it worse. You need to have all these services for people. You need to have messaging that, as they said in Sweden, you're stuck with the other parent, you got to make it work. And even just telling people you got to make it work, in some cases will help them work towards a solution. And you need education in the schools. I mean, I didn't touch this on the film, but I think, you need, as part of sex ed in the schools, how to choose a mate and what are the red flags, right? So there's a lot that needs to be done, but we need to start chipping away as opposed to saying, well, so I'd say you need 50-50 custody, you need enforcement, you need the mental health services, you need the messaging and the promotion, and all the money that is there needs to be spent better. Because people say, well, there's no money. It's like, there's tons of money in this. The industry is $50 billion. The federal government spends $4 billion on child support. So that's $54 billion. What if instead of enriching the people who are enforcing this, the legal profession too, and there are good lawyers, but they can feed off of this conflict, we spent it helping. Because I'm not sure if anyone here, and I know he's an unpopular figure, Alec Baldwin wrote a book. I'm not sure who his writer or ghostwriter was. It's a great book. And he starts out saying, if you break an arm, as messed up as healthcare can be, you go to the hospital and you expect that the doctors and the nurses and the PT will help you with your broken arm, right? No one's going to think they're going to make your arm worse, correct? But you go to family court, you don't get help. So we need to start saying that families that are in crisis, and some families really need intervention, get help, not people preying off of their suffering, making the suffering go on longer, right? And making money off of it. So, so that you have two tragedies. One, you have the tragedy of a family that's kind of doing okay, the system gets involved, and they begin to fight over who gets Tuesday night, and this gets ratcheted up. And then you have families that really need intervention. There is violence going on, there's emotional abuse going on, they need help, and they don't get the help because the system is too concerned about who gets Tuesday night. So you have a misallocation of resources. So the family that needs a lot of hand-holding needs to get that. I mean, to unclog the system with these, kind of silly custody cases, they're just about people fighting over money or power. Yes, in the purple shirt.
My name is Stephen Bird. I'm from Montgomery County, and I've been in the courts for the past 9 years or so.
Wow.
One thing that I've observed here, a lot of people feel that they're helpless, that they're lost. If they can't afford an attorney, they think, that's it, I'm done. One of the honest suggestions, easier said than done, is don't give up. Sometimes if you can't afford an attorney, read some of the laws. Now we have Google resources, law libraries, and yes, people of different, cultural backgrounds, educational, financial backgrounds. One thing that I found very helpful is actually go and sit in the courtroom where the attorneys were arguing and just hearing how it was. Obviously, you can't educate everyone and tell them everything is, but one of the things that you can offer as a police step and device, go and check it out. Now, obviously, some people might listen. When people come in, well, I don't know how this process works. I don't know anything about the custody. Take the time and do that. One of the things that I saw was in my cases, I fought, and many times I learned, and I was self-educated. And many times when I would come into court, the judges didn't like it, when they pointed out to the law specifically, they're like, all right, we have to do that. Not all the time, sometimes you were targeted as well. Just a common observation.
So what I would say to that is that I don't think any parent should have to fight or learn laws to see their kids.
Sure.
So, and I often tell people, because they often say, oh, I've been going to court for 10 years and I keep on losing. My first question will stop going. Put that money in a trust for your kid, or become an advocate with all that energy.
Or documenting on video.
Yeah, or whatever you want to do. But because to win in court, and some people can do this, you need to have a very cold legal mind. I say this, I come from a family of lawyers. I wanted to be a lawyer. That's my first training, was debate and law. not everybody thinks like that. It's not a natural way to think. So the people who I do know have success in family court are able to see the system as what it is, a rigged game, and they learn how to play it.
Right.
Not everybody can do that because some people are too emotional or they think they're going to get justice in family court. Right?
But one thing, sometimes
Yeah.
it takes 2 parties. In my situation, my ex-wife.
I don't want to hear about your
Right.
situation. Yeah.
Went away. I had no recourse other than going to court. There was nothing, no agreement.
Right,
nothing.
sometimes you can't get out of family court, but what I'm talking about are the people who said, I've been in family court 10 years, 18 years, and the judge hates me and always rules not in my favor. I'm like, at some point, you gotta stop going.
No justice.
You know, like if you see that there's no way out, and that's a very hard thing for her to admit, I don't wanna say it's a war, because that's a bad analogy, but you can choose where you take your action. And for some people, it's better working on themselves, being an advocate, sending messages of love to your child. You know, more and more of us are hearing about the drip love with the poison, drip support with the hate, you know, getting at your kids that way. So there's other ways, and some people, family court and fighting and learning these stuff is very successful, but it's not possible for all people because some people are just too emotional. I was just talking to someone outside who was saying, you know, what the judge really hates to hear, and this is true, is two people bickering. They can't deal. So they just make a snap decision, it's gonna go with mom, it's gonna go with dad, I'm out. So you have to be very cold, and I'm glad that you're able to do it, but it's something that some people can't do it. And even as a documentary filmmaker, I've seen my own sister get sucked into this. And the whole time I'm telling her, don't do this, don't get the restraining order, don't get the restraining order. I did a film about this, you don't wanna go down this route. And she did, and she basically wiped out all of her savings. And it didn't help. And her whole thing was, I want justice. I want the judge to say he's bad. Judges don't do that. They don't stand in court and go, he's the bad guy. That's how it works. Yes, Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Sim, and I have something quick. I have a document here that if anyone likes, I can email them. It's May 24th, 2007. It's called Commission for Justice Initiatives in Pennsylvania, Changing the Culture of Custody Committee, Reports and Recommendations. We spent $3 million. They took 21 days, spent all our money. They to say in here how horrible the system is. They go over all the states, they pick this gold model, they praise themselves that this is going to change everything, even the terminology. And I'm a geologist, and I don't know what sounds. But if anyone wants a copy of is anyone an attorney right now? Because anyone care? Because honestly, this is the solution to a really complex problem. We already paid taxes for it, and I'm tired of paying taxes. That's the only thing Trump's inspired me not to do. Pay taxes.
Yes, in the hat.
Ginger.
Yes.
Joe Gordon, how are you?
Hi, Joe.
So congratulations, very good film.
Thank
film. I really want to congratulate you on getting an art on film. How did you do that? And did you have it signed and stuff, or?
I really don't like that term.
Okay. What?
I mean, we say we're about love and co-parenting, and then we call people names.
Well, I think you highlighted their actions quite specifically.
But did I call them a name?
I just, yeah.
I know. So I'm saying we need to stop the name calling, because we say the other side's calling us names, the other parent's doing this, and then we say, well, the narc, the borderline, the abusive ex-spouse. There are people who are hurting. We're all hurting. We're all wounded.
Well, the alienator in the situation.
Or even let's say the other
I
parent.
have Asperger's. It's not an alienation in my case. It's attorneys that to go to
Right.
court and do this.
I know. I'm just saying. Let's take a moment to reflect and stop with some of this language. Because when I see it online and everybody who knows who works with the racing family, what's the first rule? Never talk about your ex. Unless they give me something totally good, and good isn't like they're a great bitch. That's not good. It doesn't get online. It has to be positive, or you don't say anything at all. So how I got them on film was very simple. I said, do you want to tell your side of the story? And they signed releases, and that's how they see the situation. And I feel like we need to talk to everybody. And some people really like to be on camera and to be able to tell their side. In some cases, it was more difficult in some cases to get them on there. But also, nobody's a villain in their movie in their own head. Everybody's a hero, right? So we see people as good guys and bad guys. But ever since we're doing a lot of meditation, like everything that we see is just an illusion, and delusion that we create. And I might like somebody more and dislike somebody less, but that's just my opinion. So if we can just be neutral about things and just say these are the way things are, And I'm hoping that people will watch the film who may be doing some of these behaviors, who are doing alienating behaviors. I've never called them an alienator, but the people participating in this can see this and say, oh, I might wind up not being able to see my kid because they might end up rejecting me, or look at the pain I'm causing them. Maybe not in all cases, but it's a moment to reflect. But also, I think it's very important for the kids too to know, to always give people a path at redemption. Because as soon as you call them a name and say that's who you are and labeling you, where is their path back? Because when I have seen change, it's because they knew that they would get the brownie points or society clapping and saying, oh, now you're letting the dad see the kids, good for you. And we might say, well, that's horrible, but that's why they did it, because they were able to get that reward of coming back. But we say you are gone forever, which U.S. society loves to label people and kick them out and shun them and say there's no redemption. Once you've been to jail, that's it, you're over. Once you have done a scandal, that's it, it's over. Well, why is there motivation to change? If we don't say, so the reason why I put the judge in the end, remember the judge who cries at the end? Is to show the judges you can change. You can realize you made a mistake and change. But if we say, let's lynch all the judges, why would they change? And they're just going to be defensive and just be like, no, I am making the best decisions. You don't know how hard it is for me to make a decision with all of these cases, as opposed to saying, hey, there's a judge who saw that what he did wasn't right, and he was able to make it right. Or the other judge who says, at one point I realized that asking children how they felt is not a way to get good information. So she made that realization, and I applaud her for that. I don't attack her for the other cases where she didn't, with the information she had or what she was taught to do, did not make the right decision. So we always have to give a way people to come back into the fold, to make that change, to welcome, to redeem them. And I know you're a Christian, so what is it, the prodigal son? Let's make the banquet for them, right? When they come back.
Well,
Let's slaughter the fatted calf.
You also need to identify the sin. So in order to redeem somebody. So I think you did a good job. I think you did a great job.
We can't identify sin, right? Only.
What's that?
We can't.
Sure.
Read your Bible, Joe. I'm joking. I'm not religious at all. Next question. Yes, Tamara.
I just want to bring this up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the issues come in with the therapist also because
Mhm.
the court orders these therapists. Therapists fail all the
Right.
time. And I'm not being negative towards that industry by any means, but they'll push reunification. Well, there never was a problem with that parent and with the targeted parent and the child. There was never a problem, but there was a problem because of that impossible person to work with. So reunification fails.
Right. That's why it's not in the film, really.
No. So they did say reunification, I thought.
Right, he ran away.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the problem. What I'm saying is that poor child that Brandon had to go to England.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously he is under his father's influence. That child is in so much fear. I mean, his life is ripped apart. He just wants to be loved. That's the bottom line. He wants to be loved. And because of this one parent, we can't bring that child back. I mean, for England to step in and say, you're a ward of the state now, that just damaged that child, damaged the other child, and this is the generational curse. You know what I mean?
So that's why it's so important that any solution includes the whole family, because a lot of what these therapies can do is they say, well, we're just going to work with the child, and one parent has been rejected, as opposed to a systems approach. And also what we're seeing now with new research is that a lot of these families do better with like a coach than a therapist. So a coach teaches skills, a therapist often discovers what's going on underneath, and they're both great approaches. But sometimes, especially when you have people who have mental health issues, it's better to say, this is how you are going to interact, this is the script you do, let's practice it, as opposed to trying to go back and discover the why. Not saying you shouldn't, and I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm on my 20th therapist right now, and I'm trying to see some progress. So I think everyone should do therapy, but a lot of times you need someone to say, these are the rules of engagement. because people don't know. And you can be like, okay, maybe you're crazy, but I can teach you how to engage. And there's rewards for good behavior. There's not rewards for not good behavior, right? And we're seeing that a lot of these families are doing much better. It's so in its infancy, this type of coaching, that we weren't really able to film it because it's been starting the past few years. There haven't been test cases and people want to go on camera. But I often suggest that because the problem with therapy is the therapist listens to one person, you say everything bad about the other person, and they might believe you, especially if they're your therapist, because they're your advocate. Then the other person comes in and they already hate the other person because they're being paid by you to be your advocate, which is the point of therapy. And that's why this often doesn't work when one therapist starts with one parent or the child, then brings in the other. They already have this opinion, which is great if you're doing psychoanalysis for you. But if you're trying to solve a system, that approach can make things worse. So you're absolutely right, that it can make things worse. Yes.
First of all, Ginger, my name is David Cable. I want to thank you for all the hard work and
Thank you.
dedication. I know this is a personal passion of yours for many years, so thank you very much for getting this done. A couple of questions.
Sure.
How would you advise somebody who's involved in this, and as you said before, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to turn. How can they become advocates? What should they do? How do they step outside of their situation and elevate this discussion on a more global level? And then secondarily, as you met many of these stakeholders, from judges to parents to both sides, all these different folks involved in this system, what were some of the more powerful things that you learned when you heard things from the individuals you're filming?
Okay, so the first question is, how do you become an advocate? So I think I heard a great phrase, victim is violence. So the first step is to step out of being a victim. We often confuse taking responsibility for taking on personal blame. I think they're very different. So the personal responsibility is, here I am in this horrible situation. What can I do to make it better, as opposed to trying to figure out what made it bad? Not everybody is able to be a public face advocate. I think too many people, they launch into, I'm going to tell my story to the world, and they just come off sounding crazy or wounded or angry. So to do that, the first thing is you have to be very calm. And this might take months or years of work to be able to tell your story, to be able to talk to people who make the laws, to be able to talk to judges in a way that doesn't drive people away. And the first step, and if you want to learn how to do this, we do have a program on our website where you can sign up to be an ambassador. And the first thing we tell you is never tell your story. Nobody wants to hear it. They don't. It turns them off. They're like, I don't know who to believe. They start to doubt you. Whereas if you talk about the issue, if you talk about the 22 million children in the US who can't see a parent after divorce, the trauma this causes these children, and somebody asks you, well, why are you so concerned? It's an issue that's close to my heart and I've seen in my family. And if they really press and they don't, you can say, I haven't seen my kid for a few years, like the 22 million others in the US in this situation. So I think starting by not making it about you and knowing that advocacy might not solve your situations for future generations is very key. Getting trained and being practical. So a lot of things that the advocates don't do is they do not test what they're doing and saying. So they'll say, I'm going to do a march. I'm going to do this action. And they don't step back afterwards and say, was the march successful? Did it produce results? How was the messaging? They don't go out there and say to people, what do you think of this message? What do you think of this slogan? They say, this is the slogan I'm going to use. So you always have to reflect. You know, when I started this, I used the same phrase we used in Argentina, family bond obstruction. And I think it's a great phrase. It sounds much better in Spanish. And in English, it didn't work. So I dropped it and just said erased by the family courts. People got it right away. And I would go up and I would tell people about the movie. And I would see what affected them. And when I start off with, what the government's doing and the subsidies and blah, 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 people's eyes rolls over. They think I'm a conspiracy theorist. And I said, imagine you're a child. Okay, imagine you're a child. And imagine you can't see your dad or mom. People go, oh my God, that's awful. And you're told that they never loved you. Right there, half the room is crying. And then you find out as an adult it wasn't true and they fought to see you and they couldn't. People then are usually hysterically crying at that point. And then they say, it happened to me, it happened to my boyfriend, which is very different from saying I'm a victim of this and this and this and this. Always making a child focus is very important. The other thing is that if you are saying that I have been wrongly removed from my child's life, you need to be a model of calmness, kindness. You need to be an ambassador of peace, because otherwise people will go on you. Oh, I know why you can't see your kids. You're mean, you're rude, you're crazy. So you have to be totally calm. And that's very hard. And if you're not ready, take the time to do that. So that's what I would say. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And the second question is very quickly,
It was about the stakeholders you met, the judges,
Okay.
the people in the system. What did you learn from them that was powerful?
the biggest question is that nobody thinks family court is working. I wasn't able to get anyone in Cameron to say the system's working. So let's start there. But nobody knows what to do about it. So I'd go to these conferences and you have some people who say they have a solution, but most of the time they don't know what the solution is. Or they say, oh, I'd say, do you see more and more of these cases? Yeah, every year it's getting worse and worse and worse. What do you think should be done? And I'd get such disparate answers. There was no consensus for people saying, I don't know what to do, or I can't treat these cases. I don't know. I just see them as impossible. So I think that's the biggest thing that I learned, is that they see there's a problem, they don't know a way forward. So if we can get people to share best practices, see what they're doing in Baltimore County, not that it's perfect by any means, but it's a step in the right direction. But a lot of people don't even know that those courts are doing that. So when we have a success, sharing it, let's talk more about the successes than the failures. Yeah, in the back.
Hi,
Okay.
my name is Grace Van Michelle, and I would like to know what you're doing to address this issue with children. Have you started working on a documentary specifically aimed at children so that they can actually view it in their health education classes in high school?
This is the film.
This is too old for some of these children, though. This is a much higher level. My take is, I have a niece and a nephew who have been alienated from our family.
Right.
And it's heart-wrenching. That's too much information for them.
How old are they?
It's too long, 14 and 16, I think.
So I think for the 16-year-old, the 16-year-olds, I've been to high school classes, and they all, about half the class watches long documentary films. I understand the reason why this is more aimed at, like, let's say 18 to 25 is because that's when they often begin to leave the house and they're able to do something. So with kids, we're not there yet, because when they see the film, even these kids who are older, right now, if they say, okay, I see there's a problem, I want help, who do I call? What's the answer? Nobody.
Counselor. They at least have a counselor that they can go to at school.
And the counselor says, I'm not getting involved in a school problem. I have 500 kids to deal with. So what we need to set up are the resources for the kids, which is part of our impact campaign. I'll get to both of you. I see 2 hands there. So what we want to do with our impact campaign, why we're asking for donations, and you have a piece of paper on how to donate, is we need to have a text line for the kids. So when they say, I need help, there's at least someone that they can talk to, and online resources, curriculum packets, and training the mental health professionals, because a lot of them don't see that this is a problem. So they could go to a counselor and say, my mom is bad mouthing my dad, and they could say, well, that's a normal part of divorce. Just go la 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 la, and that could be the advice. So we need to start building from the ground up resources for children. There aren't even books for kids, and I mean that by young adults. I would love to do that. People can go on the website and see how much this film costs. So if you're willing to fund that, I will make that my next project, because that's the reality. But I specifically targeted the kids who aged out of the system, because parents would always say, well, I can't get to my kid, they're over 18, it's too late. But over 18, they are able to make those decisions themselves. Whereas a kid who's 14, right now, we need so much more mental health services for them to be able to do that, and they're not in place yet. So even one high school said, we don't want to show this film, and they said, why? Because we don't know how to help them. So if they realize there's a problem, they're just going to feel worse. So I would love to do more stuff, and there is some stuff for younger kids. What I found is there's nothing for kids between like 12 and up. So even their young 20s, there's nothing. There is stuff for younger kids, but as you know, you can't give something for an 8-year-old to a 15-year-old. Yes.
As a child, they don't understand when they're being caught in between
Right.
the one and the other parent. And the alienation, when that begins, they're under a spell, essentially. It's almost like brainwashing.
Right.
It's not. So when one parent recognizes that that's happening, there's got to be some kind of resource, because that child's not going to go.
I know there are no resources.
And I'm thinking, that's got to be criminal. There's got to be some way, if the child's being abused physically, you go to a social worker.
Right.
How can we get this into social workers
I hate to sound like a broken record. All I know what to do is to make films, and I've seen the impact. No. I've seen the impact. I've seen the impact. Let me finish. I've seen the impact that documentaries film. Has anyone seen the film Blackfish? Yeah, one person has. Does anyone know that SeaWorld is now going out of business? Okay, why? Because someone made a documentary that not everybody saw, but the kids heard about it and said, Mommy, I don't want to go to the place that hurts the killer whales. And even though they made feature films, Free Willy, that documentary, SeaWorld is now having, they have to rebrand themselves as like a beer theme park. And I lived in San Diego because the kids didn't want to go. They didn't say, I don't want to go see whales being tortured, Mommy. Like, really? So documentary films, even people don't see it, it can have an impact, but without you guys arranging the screenings and bringing it there, impact will be limited. But that's how we get the conversation started. And I hate to break it to you, this is going to take years to solve. The first step is awareness, then it's raising the resources and money, then it's trying out to see what approaches work. And letting even the social workers know. I was on a call of divorce coaches, and you know what someone said after I talked? Oh, I thought erasing a parent was a good thing. This person's a divorce coach. So there's a lot of work to be done, and movements take years. So we need to start building. Instead of saying we need to solve this tomorrow, how can we solve this in 20 years? And people get very depressed when I say 20, 30 years, but better in 20, 30 years than never, right? And any movement, it's 20 to 50 years to solve. But we can gain time if we're smart about it, and we realize how we look at other movements and we copy what worked, and we don't do what didn't work, we can save a few years. But if we just cry that this is not going to take the time, you know, and what I would say is that if a kid is having that, the worst thing you can do is say you're being brainwashed.
Exactly.
What you need to do is you just need to show that everything they said through your actions and not words is untrue. So if they say you're angry and you're never angry, at some point the kid's going to realize that. But if you say, oh, I can't believe they tell you how angry I am, you know, because then as soon as you say it's a lie, then it's like, well, who do I believe? So it's always just like, well, I'm here for you. Let's go do something fun. One lesson I learned from Brian is that he would tell me that his mother, whenever she would see him, would always be like, what's going on? Let's talk about this. And he goes, I just wanted to be a kid. So just being there, providing those fun moments, those parenting moments as you can, the little bit you can, that can be very powerful. And if you can volunteer your kid's school, do it with the intent that you'll never talk to your kid because they might not want to talk to you. But the other parents slowly might see what a good person you are. It can also backfire, and they might remove the kids from the school or do something. But I've seen very successful cases where they walk in, all the parents go, oh, you're the evil person that I heard about. And after they're like, oh, you're the dad that brings in the cupcakes. And then the school goes, well, this is kind of weird. And then you build allies, but not by going and talking about your case and being on the defensive. Because when you're on the defensive, people think, what, you did something wrong. Yes. Oh, wait. So if I could get the woman in the front, Chrissy, just because she hasn't spoken. I'm sorry, you in the front. You raised your hand. Yes. And I'll get to you.
You gave some advice earlier tonight. I love all your answers, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Of how to bring the children back to the erased parent. And your advice was the erased parent has to be in a good place, in a calm place, in a healed place. When that wound is an open wound and the child they're erased and they don't have contact with their children, that wound is left open.
Right.
How do you get that erased parent to a place of being healed when the problem's still ongoing?
Right.
How do you advise that erased parent to come to that place of like rising above like such pain, to come to that place where they can eventually
fighting.
He's almost this
Yeah.
perfect person that because everyone gets angry. You said,
Everyone does get angry,
yeah.
but you don't have to show your anger publicly. So I think the first step is there's a lot of help available through meditations. I think a meditation practice is very helpful with whatever spiritual tradition you're in or a non-spiritual one. Just learning to calm down. The anger will be there and the sadness. It doesn't mean you have to act on it.
Anger. I mean, like
Anything.
just a place of being unhealed.
Well, no one's perfect.
Right.
But in a position of where you're able to help a child that comes to you, and not when they come just break down and cry. It might be therapy. I think in-person support groups are very necessary, right? Not just online stuff. Finding joy. So I think the parents who are able to find joy in some other activity, whether it's a hobby, their job, a new relationship, cooking, that's very helpful, and giving yourself the permission to feel joy. So the worst thing to say is, I'm so sad, I'm going to be a martyr now. It's finding those little moments of joy, because that's what your child will be attracted to. Is you can always say it hurt me a lot, but you know, now I'm like a baker, I'm a championship baker, and I bring joy to the world through cupcakes, and your kid will see that. Because there's something, but the parents who just close themselves off, is like, I can't find joy ever again. I think it's hard. It's very, very hard. But at least moving towards that, it's not about being perfect and perfectly healed, because no one is perfect. But it's moving towards that, at least making it the goal. I think the first step is just saying, I give myself permission to be happy, I'm going to get help. And if I can't afford therapy, I'm going to look for support groups. I'm going to look for a friend. So also I don't have the need to tell my story. I'm going to journal. I'm going to take some time out to meditate. I'm going to spend some time in nature. I think those are all helpful things, and it's a long process, but I have seen some parents do it, so you can get there. Caroline and Brian, I think they did like a therapy program at some point. I forget what it's called, but some sort of like transformational stuff. And everybody's different. So for some people, meditation, that's been amazing for me. And I've finally seen the results after 3 years, but for some people, they might not like that, and it might be something else. You over there. And also, you were also raising your hand in the green shirt too. No? Okay, yes.
I just wanted to say that the part in your video where the men are in the barber shop and they made this statement about how people don't understand, I guess essentially what their custody orders mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. I mean, I think that's how a lot of our research came about.
Right.
You are typically given this shared legal, one parent has physical custody agreement, and with that being said, you don't even understand what having a shared legal agreement means.
Right.
So with that being said, what is Aunt Michelle, are you with her?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad that somebody's here. So what I have realized with the mental health side, there are resources, and everyone being here, just networking, helps that grow. There are school districts. I live in Berks County. I'm from Montgomery County, so I have, I mean, I wish more people would have showed up, but I know a lot of people from Berks down to Chester, and I know one school district that for sure does a blended family counseling thing through the school district. Anybody can reach out to me. I will tell you what school district does that. What I think you can do is go to either that school board meeting and ask them how that came about, or go to your own school board meetings and ask them, is there any way we can get this implemented in the school? So all these kids have the opportunity with signatures from their parents allowing it, 30 minutes once a week for 4 weeks to come in and see that there are other children that go through this. That is happening. But you have to let people know, because some of the school districts, they don't know. I mean, they only hear that one-sided, demonized, one of the other.
Or the schools don't know the laws, that both parents have a right to report cards and medical records.
Yeah.
There's also, there are a lot of resources out there that sometimes people don't know about. Sometimes in their despair, they say, I don't know. And I've seen cases where someone would call me up and go, do you know of a support group in Northern New Jersey? I'll say, did you Google it? And they go, no. It's like, I actually know of one. So sometimes it's looking, it's knocking on doors. One thing I found too, there's a lot of places that unfortunately identify as gender specific, but they actually give help to everybody. So I know, for example, the Father's Rights Movement, they will give help to mothers. I also know of centers that say like Women's Justice Center, and they say, oh, we'll give help for men. This is the name that we have. And unfortunately, most men won't walk through the door or ask. So sometimes there's even stuff in courthouses, there's workshops. So unfortunately, I think what's unfair is to ask people to do this work, but there are resources out there. And if you see a good program, I think what's really missing is sharing that this program exists. I didn't know about it. And then bringing that out, being the evangelist, bringing that out to other schools and saying, hey, this district has this, and that's something powerful that you could do as an advocate, is to bring that program to your school.
There's this dogs group, dads in schools, and I contacted that guy, and he would love that. And I was vice president of Moms Club, the Moms Club should know that.
Yeah.
International.
I think we have time for one more question. Is there one more question for someone who hasn't answered a question? Yeah, it's right there.
Is Erasing Dad on Netflix, and will Erasing Family be on Netflix?
So Erasing Dad, because it was censored, and I didn't get into this so much in the film, it is available on YouTube. And if you go to our website, erasingfamily.org, you can watch it for free. It's in Spanish with English subtitles, so just make sure you click on the subtitles. They are there on YouTube. You just have to click on the CC little button. We want this on Netflix. We want this to be streamed and reach a wide audience. Until we can get it there, we're working very hard to get it on Netflix. These community screenings can be very powerful because also it's a place for people to network, to share experiences, and any help that we can get getting this into universities, because we kill two birds with one stone, professionals of tomorrow and the kids who are away from home for the first time. Also getting to bar associations, the AFCC chapters, that's the Association of Family Conciliatory Courts, their chapters, family courts, legislative bodies, houses of worship. And I tell people it's great if you can get a screening sponsor, but you can also go to university, rent a room, they're often not that expensive, buy some pizzas, and invite any kid who wants to see it for free. And if anybody can get more than 100 kids to show up, we'll waive the screening fee, which is very low already. So we really want kids to see it. Yes, anybody else? One last question?
Can I just add to your comment? That does apply to kids in elementary school. So it is not specified toward middle school or high school. The child that was able to get that is only 10. So they do offer that help for younger kids too.
One thing I want to say is I talked to someone from a mayor's office in Canada that I put in touch, and she really said they're out to educate law enforcement. I lost my kids because a policeman came to my house and called me a narcissist. I also had a woman who was a supervised visitor send the cops my house to collect a bill. The police are used as pawns. I mean, they need to be educated because Lord knows culture zones.
Yeah, police departments are very important too, to educate. I mean, we don't talk about this. I mean, to me, it's crazy that in my years doing this, I haven't run into one other documentary filmmaker who's making a film on this topic. I've seen tons about, Syrian refugees, the prison population. These are all very important. Environmentalism. These are all very important topics, but no one else is making a film about this. So it's a huge problem. It affects half the population maybe, and we don't talk about it. So it's time that we start talking about it. And Noreen, can you raise your hand? Noreen is there to help set up screenings. If anyone needs to talk, they can also talk to me. And if you want to donate, there's instructions on how to do so. You can use it on our website. It's tax deductible. And right before we leave, thank you so much, Chrissy Smith, for arranging this. And Noreen, Dawn, and Cristobal and Tamara for helping us.